rocking.
Is this where the damn drumming and the music kicks in?
Yeah.
What in the world is going on? Hello and welcome, boys and girls across the world. This is On the Pipe Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tyler Shepardson. Today is Thursday, October the 5th, 2023, years after zero, and we're back in your life. We are back in action for another episode of On the Pipe Podcast. This one is going to be a bit of a weekend review because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We got a lot of things that went on. We got a lot of stuff that is going on. We got a few new champions that have been crowned that we're going to talk about from the West Coast to the East Coast and all sorts of stuff in between. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. My apologies for no show last week and being late on the show this week. I was actually out of town on vacation. We were in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, went to Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone National Park. It was my full intention to still put out a show last week. Tuesday was our travel day. Wasn't able to get to it with everything that we had going on. We had to fly out to Salt Lake City and then drive up to Jackson Hole, and then didn't have service. Ran into some issues. Same thing Wednesday, just kind of dealing with being there, dealing with all that. This past Tuesday, we actually traveled back down to Salt Lake City and then flew overnight back home. So I do apologize that we did not get a show out. It was my intention to, but we're gonna make it up today. We're gonna get a show out. So sorry we're late, but better late than never. But never late is better. I get it. I understand. One thing that I did get to do on the flights, I, for the first time in my life, listened to an episode of On the Pipe Podcast. So I guess I shouldn't say that. That's misleading. I've listened to two other shows in my life. One time I listened to a show that has since been deleted. I'm pretty sure we did a show in my buddy's basement on my 26th birthday. I think it was my 26th birthday. We had a lot of alcoholic beverages. And we said some outlandish stuff on that show. So I did go back and listen to that one because it was my intention to delete the things that probably shouldn't have been said and then post the rest of the episode. Turns out like more than half the episode needed to be deleted, so I think that one's in the archives. I don't think that one is anywhere to be found, but that was a fun episode to do nonetheless. So I did listen to that one before I ended up scrapping it. And then the episode that I did with Josh Strang and Lyndon Snodgrass, I listened to that one again. For some reason, I forget why. There was a particular reason. I don't remember why. What I'm getting at is I hate listening to myself. And what I did on my travel days was listen to episodes of On the Pipe Podcast because, to be honest with you, to break it to you, I don't listen to any other moto podcast. I do listen to other podcasts. I listen to the Pat McAfee Show every day. It's about the NFL. He's just so entertaining that him and his friends have made me care about the NFL. I listen to Joe Rogan podcast. I listen to several other podcasts. I don't listen to any moto podcasts. I've tried listening to some. Not going to mention any by names, but just not my cup of tea. That being said, listening to the show, it gave me a lot of ideas for one, and it also gave me some ideas of what to do and what not to do. And one thing, what not to do is exactly what I'm doing right now, and that is rambling at the beginning of an episode. So I wanted to let you guys know. Didn't know how to bring it in here. Didn't know how to circle it in, but I did want to let you know that I did listen to some of the show. And I hear feedback a lot. And like I said, I don't listen to the show because it's twofold. One, I don't want to be embarrassed of myself by anything I said, so I kind of record these things, put them out there, and forget about it. And the other part is that there's some times where I miss things in conversations, especially when we have guests on, because I'm not just talking to the guest. I'm managing the stream. I'm making sure the microphones are set up and working. I'm making sure the microphones are at the right audio level. I'm checking the gain and checking the peaking to make sure it's not over peaking and it's not going in and out. When people get a little bit excited and they come up, I got to turn the microphones down a little bit. When they start off super quiet and before we get them going, I got to turn the mics up. So then when they do get excited, it starts peaking and blowing out the microphone. A lot of times we're doing those interviews live. So then I got to manage the live stream. I got to check and see if any comments are coming through. I got to check and make sure that the stream is going out. I got to check and make sure that the audio is going to the stream. I got to pull up different web pages to look up past results, look up race results from that weekend, look up something on their Instagram for something that they said, look up something from an injury that they had. What I'm getting at is there's a lot of time in these conversations where when I'm kind of a one-man band, the focus is all over the place because there's so many other things that you got to do that it's hard to focus on having the conversation. So part of going back and listening to episodes is exactly confirming one of my fears that I did have, in that going back and listening to it post-tense, hearing something in the conversation that I didn't hear before and not following up on that question. So I try my best to come prepared with questions. Like when I have a guest on, I will do some research and prepare some stuff, and I'll ask them those questions. But one thing that I try to do the best is make it more of a conversation than an interview. So if I ask a question and they branch off on something that sparks my interest, I try to follow up on that right then. But then that could also take me away from the next question that I was setting up in the first place. But if I don't bring it up right then I'm going to forget about it. And so, I don't know, it's just a kind of there's definitely an art to interviewing and an art to talking to people, especially talking to people to get information. And I don't know, you guys might have a better opinion on this than I do, but I feel like, especially over the years, I've gotten to the point where I'm able to ask good questions. And that's what I try to pride the show on, is asking the questions that you wouldn't normally get to hear, that people normally wouldn't ask, and trying to dig into that conversation and branch off of it. So that's what I try to do. But when you're managing the show and doing everything yourself, sometimes I'll be caught up in the technology and making sure everything's working all right and completely miss parts of the conversation. So going back and listening to some of the stuff, I did notice that there were some moments where they said something that sparked my interest listening to it, and I'm like, oh, I hope I followed up on that. And then you can kind of hear me go, yeah. So anyway, like we were talking about, and then I asked something completely different. And that, you may not know it, they may not know it, but it's textbook to me that I got distracted somewhere else, making sure that we had something going forward, making sure something with the stream wasn't all right, and then completely lost out on that. So that is something that I found out I need to work on. Another thing is exactly what I'm doing right now, and that's rambling. I did notice a lot of rambling, and that is something that I know that I did do, but I didn't realize how distracting it was. Like me being, I would say, I haven't been formally diagnosed, but I'd say I'm pretty ADD. So when I'd go and listen to my own episodes, I would be screaming at myself, get to the point. And so I can only imagine what you guys are feeling. And I have heard those comments before. I'm sorry. My mind is going to wander. My mind is going to ramble. Sorry about it. That's exactly what we're doing right now. But the point is that I listened to a few episodes. I listened to the Trevor Bollinger episode in its entirety. That one's like 2 hours long. That was a cooler episode than I think I gave it credit for at the time. I knew it was a cool episode, but going through and going in depth in that and talking about his entire career and doing it as a consumer. So when I was doing it in person, the same thing. I'm worried about, what do I sound like? Am I asking a stupid question? Is this question going to be dumb? Where do we go next from here? What should I get into next? Should we talk about 2018? Should we talk about the championship in 2016? And these are all the kind of internal dialogue, so I can't be as engaged in the conversation that I would like to as I'm trying to run the show and host the show and manage the show and manage the feed and all of that. So listening to it as a consumer, I got to really hear what Trevor was saying. I got to really hear what was going on in those. And so it allowed me to engage in it more. And just that style of show, I don't think it's ever been done before, where someone literally went through and talked about their career from start to finish and how they got to where they are right now. And it's crazy because we did that show earlier this year. We did it in January. And so much has changed in Trevor's career and life just this year alone. And so I was kind of putting together all the stuff that he's gone through this year and everywhere that he's at in his career now, and piecing that together with the stuff that we talked about back then. And I don't know, it was a really interesting way to go back and listen to it. And then also listen to some of these shows that I do by myself, and kind of I made a bunch of notes on my phone to critique myself and things to do differently, things that I can do better. And so feedback is good. I get a lot of feedback. Sometimes the feedback is just someone really upset with their lives, and so they want to make someone else miserable too. But some of it is very constructive, and I do take it to heart. So I appreciate you guys' feedback, but more than that, I appreciate you guys listening to On the Pipe podcast. We're at the make it or break it point. I did tell you guys I'm up to something. Have no idea what's going on with that. Don't have any update for you, unfortunately. We're working on a partnership. I will tell you that. We're working on a partnership that can bring more coverage and more exposure and more reach to the podcast. Unfortunately, I've been told week after week for probably 5 weeks now that we're going to have something done by the end of the week. Still have absolutely nothing. By the end of last week, I didn't even get the we'll have something done next week thing. So that is why I get excited that we are up to something, but I can't really go into details about what we're up to because sometimes it transpires like this. So that is some more information. We're working on a partnership. I will tell you that. It's going to be something very good for the show. But further than that, I think going back and listening to these shows, having that time alone in nature, like my screen time for last week was like less than an hour per day on my phone, and it was awesome. My mind feels refreshed. I was able to see more animals in the wild than I've ever seen in my life. It was a really cool experience. We basically just wandered around national parks all day, every day, out in the wilderness. We saw moose, pronghorn, mule deer, white-tailed deer. We were very close to 2 grizzly bears. Didn't quite get to see them, but they were on the trail that we were on, and the people hiking around us saw them. We looked for them, didn't find them. Elk, bison, big old bison, all sorts of stuff. So to be able to get that time away, it also gave me some time to think, reflect, figure out where we're going, what we're doing. This podcast has been something that's been a passion project of mine, as you guys all know. But it is getting to the point where it's crunch time. Am I going to have to go back and get another job? That's what I'm avoiding. But no, it's just this thing can be successful. This thing can be a tool. This thing can be much bigger than what it is. I have all the ideas. Where I lack is in the execution. I'm not going to lie, I got nothing to hide. Sometimes that is from fear of myself. Sometimes that is from fear of failure. Sometimes that is from being embarrassed. Sometimes that is from being depressed and not wanting to talk to anybody. I'll schedule a show with 3 guests and then lock myself into a hole and then just not want to talk to anybody and completely skip out on the show. Like, these are all mental things that I deal with, and I mean, I'm not afraid to talk about it. I've kind of mentioned some stuff in the past. I don't think I've gone into too much detail, but it's something that I'm not afraid to talk about, but it is something that I am actively trying to get better at because, like I said, have tons of ideas for this thing, and we've built a very good following with what we've done already, and I think the sky's the limit, and I think that we can do a lot more for off-road. I think we can talk to a lot more people. I think we can bring a lot more exposure. I think we can do a lot more media coverage. I think there's all sorts of stuff that we can do to grow this into a legit media company, and so that's what my goal is. That's what my focus is, and I really appreciate that you guys listen, and I hope that you can stick around through this next chapter. And I mean, I would be remiss not to say that there are a lot of empty promises that we talk about on the show, but I plan to really make a concerted effort towards it, and yeah, I think you guys deserve it, and I think the off-road racers certainly deserve coverage on a higher stand put and a higher standout percentage, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, but yeah, I don't know. Didn't plan on going there at the beginning of this episode, but here we are. So I know that we talk a lot. Now it's time to do. And I'm excited about it, and we got a lot of stuff going on. But right now, we're going to talk about some racing. We're going to talk about some stuff going on in the world of off-road. Another Baylor championship came to the National Enduro Series. I guess we'll start there, and then we'll move out west. But, yeah, 7 Baylor championships in a row, 8 Baylor championships in total. Grant Baylor just wrapped up his 3rd National Enduro Championship to Stu's 5. So they have 8 titles between the two of them. 5 for Stu, 3 for Grant, and 7 in a row for the Baylor's brothers. The last one to get in that mix was Russell Bobbitt back in 2016. I do believe. And I think Caleb Russell was the year before that, 2015. But anyway, so that was cool. And it was really cool. So to see their kind of breakdown of everything that went on there and see the 4 generations of Baylors that were there to celebrate, I think that was a really cool moment. That's got to be an awesome experience. So it was the Baylor boys. Stu's got his kids. The Baylor's parents, the Baylor's grandparents were all there to celebrate in Indiana that 3rd championship for Grant Baylor, 8th for the Baylor brothers. Like I said, no doubt that had to be a really cool experience for that entire family, for them to go out and see all that. Stu obviously got the win once again. Stu Baylor, we saw him coming out this year, a little bit of struggling in the first half of the season. And, I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no way around that. He came out 7th place, 7th place, 7th place, 8th place, 4th place, kind of back on the right track, but still not on the podium. And since then, he's gone 3-0, so he's won the last 3 races of the series and got right back into that Stu Baylor form, especially the one that we knew at the National Enduros. Now, last year when he was hurt and he came back, he finished 5th place, his first race back from a broken neck. We talked to him on the show, and he even talked about how that was the worst National Enduro finish that he had in quite some time, and that was with a broken freaking neck. So for him to come out this year fully healthy, on a new team, on a new bike, and then 3 straight 7th places in a row, and 8th place, a 4th place, it's like, what in the world is going on with Stu Baylor? Like, how is this happening? And then talking to him on the show, we've learned that there was some bike issues at the beginning. It took some while to get set back up on the bike, to figure out the rear ends of the bike, to figure out how the new bike, the new chassis worked. No doubt he has figured out how that chassis worked, as he's been able to have success in both series, leading the points in the GNCC series and winning 3 straight races in the National Enduro series. Furthermore, this past weekend's at the Mud Dobbers National Enduro, he won 4 out of the 6 tests. He started out 2nd in Test 1, won Test 2, 2nd in Test 3, and then won out the last 3 sections as well to take that overall win by almost a minute. 54 seconds was the gap between 1st and 2nd place. 2nd place was none other than Josh Toth, who did come out and click off a 1st place win in that first test and then the 3rd test. So the 2 tests that Stu did not win were the tests that Josh Toth, like both, won out there on the day on that gas machine. And then Grant Baylor, I think all he needed to do was a 3rd place. It might have been a 4th place, but he gets it done nonetheless. 3rd place finish on the day and seals up the national championship once again. So going to carry on that number 1 plate. First one on the Kawasaki as he switched to them this year, but he retains that National Enduro title going back to back and taking that overall championship. Ricky Russell would end the day in 4th place, Trevor Bollinger in 5th, and then if we look down to the Pro 2 class, Liam Draper would take the win, extend his points lead in his Pro 2 championship campaign, also leading the points in the GNCC XC2 points as well. So Liam Draper having a heck of a season on his new team as well. 2nd place in Pro 2 is Pro 2 rookie Grant Davis coming home with a 2nd place finish. Grant has really stepped up, especially in those National Enduros, and he's been running some really good races himself and takes 2nd place on the day. And then Thorne Devlin would end the day 3rd fastest in the Pro 2 class. So that is the way that Pro 1 and Pro 2 shook up. And then looking at our elite women, women's elite, women's pro, whatever you want to say, Mackenzie Tricker was able to go out there and get it done. She takes the win on the weekend, but even more than that, Mackenzie Tricker also wrapped up a national title of her own, and it's not just a national enduro title that she wrapped up. 5 championships in a row. Mackenzie Tricker, just like Booker T, is the 5-time women's elite national championship rider. 5 in a row. That is unprecedented. Unprecedented is a fancy word. I don't know if it's actually unprecedented. If it has happened before, it hasn't happened very often for Mackenzie Tricker. As she goes out there, 5 championships in a row. Coming from motocross. Let's keep in mind, Mackenzie Tricker is a very accomplished motocross rider. She's a multi-time Australian national champion. She is a multi-time U.S. national champion via Loretta Lynn's, via WMX when it was still around. And then you take a moto girl, throw her in the woods, and not just the woods, national enduro, the tightest woods, single track racing, and she wins 5 national titles in a row. Awesome job by Mackenzie Tricker. Congratulations on that accomplishment. Rachel Goodish would end the day second place on the day, and I think she's going to end up second place in the championship points. And then Corey Steed back out there competing as well, third place overall on the day for her in the women's elite class. So that is the way that things shake up over here on the East Coast. And the National Enduro, it looks like a fun series to run. But to see that racing over there, it's kind of cool to keep up with the test times throughout the day and then see exactly how it shapes up throughout the day. But Stu Baylor takes the win. Grant Baylor takes the championship to go 3 championships for Grant Baylor. And once again, 8 championships for the 2 of them. Now, let's take a look out to the other coast with some more championship success. That is right. This past weekend, it was the Ridgecrest event happening out in California. Dante Oliveira would get it done once again. He would take the win on the weekend and wrap up his 4th straight National Grand Prix Championship. So NGPC used to be known as the Big Six. Dante Oliveira has won that title since 2020. So we're talking about success sustained in these pro race series over some time. If you look out west, you cannot say anything other than that sustained success by Dante Oliveira. So he makes it 4 in a row, wraps up the championship. Still one more race to go over there as well, but no need to worry about that pro overall championship because it has been wrapped up. Dante Oliveira grabs that number 1 plate once again with a win this past weekend. So went out, solidified it, put an exclamation point on it, grabs the win and the overall while wrapping up the championship. Second place, it was Austin Walton, who was competing and giving Dante a run for his money there. He ends the day second place. And then taking home third place on the day was Justin Hoft, who is going to round out that overall podium there. As we take a look down to the Pro 2 class, it was Cade Tinkler Walker that take the Pro 2 class win on the weekend. And then second place in Pro 2, it was Jack Simpson, who there locked horns with a Pro 2 championship. Jack Simpson right in the mix of that one. That one has not yet been decided yet. Cade Tinkler Walker and Jack Simpson are actually tied in points right now as they head into the final round. So they go 1 and 2 in Pro 2 this week, just like where they've been pretty much most of the season. And then Colton Ake, I don't know if it's Ake or Eck. I'm sorry. I was really confident about this West Coast stuff until we started getting names. Gets third place. So Colton Ake gets third place in that Pro 2 class. And we take a look at our Pro Women. Brandy Richards sets the world on fire. She grabs the win once again. Michaela Nielsen in the number 2 spot, and then Ava Silvestri would take home the final women's pro podium spot with a third place finish. So that was the NGPC going out in California. So four-time champion Dante Oliveira. Wrapping it up, doing it once again. Looking forward to seeing some of those guys riding in the ISDE here in just about a month's time, really. So going into this weekend, we got GNCC that's going to be happening out here on the East Coast. It is going to be up in West Virginia. It is, what's this one? It's not the high voltage. It's buckwheat. It's the buckwheat where Josh Toth almost coulda, woulda, shoulda had his first ever career win. Or was that high voltage? I don't know. I get all the West Virginia rounds confused. But a couple things to note. Obviously, Beta is still the official manufacturer of On the Pipe podcast. Super stoked to be working with Beta. Hope to keep that Beta train rolling into the next year. Hopefully we'll have some announcements on that here soon. And then also Zach Tussle at Raymond James Financial. Now is the best time of the year, I'm telling you, to hit up Zach Tussle. Financial Advisors, DenverNC.com. Zach Tussle is a racer and a financial advisor. We say it every week. You don't have to be rich to have a financial advisor. You want to have to have money in your future after retirement. I know it's hard to think about now, especially for all of us youngs out here racing, but you can start now. It doesn't take nearly as much money as you think to start investing in yourself, start investing in your future. Zach Tussle can tell you way more about it in a much smarter manner than I can. Financial Advisors, DenverNC.com, or find them on social media. Shoot them a message. Let them know that you're a listener of OTP, and you can get a free consultation and listen to exactly what Zach Tussle can do and how he can help you out. So that's going to do it. We do have some guests lined up. As I mentioned, this week, quite a bit of a whirlwind. So trying to sneak in this show and get it out to you guys. But we got a lot of champions to talk to. We got a lot of people that we can talk to. This weekend, I will be up at the GNCC. We will be filming that. Look for that video to come out late Sunday night, early Monday morning. Try to get it out as quick as possible. And, yeah. I think that's about it. Next week, let's do this. I'm going to call it. We're going to do a weekend review with Stu on Monday. We'll do an OTP Tuesday and talk to some people on Tuesday. And then maybe next week sometime we'll get into silly season. Maybe we'll do our first silly season show. That's something that Stu mentioned last week. There are a good bit of changes. There is a bunch of stuff that we can talk about. There are some things that might surprise you. So maybe next week in October, we're going to be starting silly season for next year. Talk about what is going on. But as always, be a friend, tell a friend. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Sorry for the rambling at the beginning. Hope you got some race knowledge to go with you on your Thursday. We will see you this weekend, and we'll see you back on the Pipe podcast on Monday. Thanks, everybody. Peace.